Hello, Algebra 1. In this concept, we're going to learn about percents and proportions. These are comparisons of numbers that are very useful in everyday life. Let's start with a definition of our first number comparison, which is a ratio. So remember in the video that if you need to pause it so that you can catch up with the note taking. So a ratio is a comparison of two numbers. And mathematically, we're comparing them using division. We can write them three different ways. So the first way is using a fraction bar. So an example is 4 and then a fraction bar 5, and we read that as 4 to 5. A second way we can write a ratio is using the word 2. So we could simply write 4 to 5. And then finally, using a colon, we still read it the same way as 4 to 5. Now jump down to your notes section because we're going to do an example of a ratio. At a baseball game, the number of hot dogs sold was 30 while the number of hamburgers sold was 12. Using three different formats, write the reduced ratio of hot dogs to hamburgers. So, three different formats, hot dogs to hamburgers. Notice the order that we are given. Hot dogs first, then hamburgers. So there are 30 hot dogs, so that will be our first number, and then 12 hamburgers. Let's start with writing that as in the fraction format. So we would write 30 over or compared to 12. Now we're going to reduce that, simplify that fraction. We can divide the top and the bottom number both by 6. So we'll get 5 halves, or 5 to 2. So that tells us that our comparison of items sold was 5 hot dogs for every 2 hamburgers. We could also write that our second way using the word 2, and then finally using a colon. And that can be very helpful information if you are running that stand at the game. Now jump back up to your vocabulary section and let's get down the definition for a rate. It's very similar to ratio. So a rate is a comparison of two numbers, but these numbers have different units. So a comparison of two numbers with different units. An example would be if we compared money, so $10 to an item. So let's say we went to the grocery store and we bought 5 cans of food. So $10 to 5 cans. In a rate, you will see units because that distinguishes that these numbers have different values. Another helpful concept is a unit rate, and you can think of that when you hear unit rate as a 1 unit rate. So this is when you take that rate comparison and you divide it down to 1 unit. So the definition is it is a rate where a quantity is compared to 1 of another quantity. So we're going to go back to our same example and we're going to divide or simplify our rate. And so 10 divided by 5 is 2. So our $10, let's get that back, for 5 cans will reduce to $2 per 1 can. Jump down to your notes section and let's do the next example, and this will be practicing rate. So your family can rent a boat for 8 hours costing $212. So if we write this as a rate, I know that I would want to know how much money per hour. So let's start and we'll put our dollar amount as our first number. So $212 over or compared to 8 hours. Now writing that as a unit rate, we're going to divide out the numbers, and then so we get that dollars down to 1 hour. So 212 divided by 8 is $26.50. So we can write that as $26.50 over or compared to 1 hour. Notice I don't write the 1 near the hour. I just list the unit because I don't really need the number. But a unit rate is when we divide out a rate so it's down to a comparison of 1 unit. Let's continue with examples of rates and unit rates. So grocery store A sells an item that costs $3.79 for 16 ounces. The same item can be purchased at grocery store B for $3.20 for 12 ounces. Which store has the product for a better price? Well, at a glance, you would say, well, grocery store B because it's cheaper. But then you look at the amount, and grocery store A's item has more to it than B. So the only way that we can really tell is to take it down to how much money per ounce, and then we can compare which is the better price. So let's start with store A. Store A has the item for $3.79 compared to or over 16 ounces. Store B has that same item for $3.20 over or compared to 12 ounces. Now let's divide that out. So on your calculator, you take 3.79 and divide it by 16. We're going to round to the nearest cent, which is hundredths place, so the second decimal place. So you should get 24 cents per 1 ounce. And again, notice how I write that. I don't put the 1 in the denominator, just the unit. Now divide out your amount for store B. So $3.20 divided by 12. And then round to hundredths place so that you will be able to tell how much money or cents per ounce, 27. So now we can see that it is actually store A that has the product for the better price, because it is least expensive per ounce at that store. When you go to the grocery store, if you look on the shelves of items, stores will often have a marker that tells you how much money per ounce, so that can help you make your selection. Look at the bottom of this notes page and you will see a little preview of some information that we're going to use in the next concept. So these are common conversions. Now they are listed as one thing equaling to another, but we are going to use them as conversion rates. So if you look at it, we have 3 categories of lengths, weights, and capacity. And then if you look at the lengths, for example, we have 1 foot compared to, which is equivalent to 12 inches. 1 yard is equivalent to 3 feet, and 1 mile is equivalent to 5,280 feet. Often, those are units that we convert back and forth. Same thing with weights, pounds to ounces, tons to pounds. I don't know if you knew that a ton is 2,000 pounds. And then capacity. So 1 gallon is 4 quarts, 1 quart is 2 pints, and 1 pint is 2 cups, etc. So jump back up to your vocabulary section and let's get down our last 2 definitions before we end these notes. So a conversion factor or rate, it is a ratio used as a multiplier to change a set of units. So you may want to change feet to yards or yards to feet, or feet to miles or miles to feet, or gallons to quarts or quarts to cups. So those conversion factors are very helpful and useful as multipliers to do that. There is a method that you're going to learn in the next concept to do this, and it is called dimensional or unit analysis. And so get down the definition of this. This is a technique to convert one measurement to another, focusing on the units. So often in math, we focus just on the numbers, but in dimensional or unit analysis, we will focus on both. We will focus on the numbers and the units to help us accomplish these problems. All right, that concludes the notes for the first part of percents and proportions.